Late News with Tracey Spicer.
Tonight, fears an Indonesian people smuggler is testing our defences before sending more boatloads of refugees. A tragic mishap could have led to the Victorian train derailment that injured 50 passengers. And Australia to meet England in the Rugby World Cup final next Saturday. Good evening. Also tonight, Turkish police reportedly questioning 3 people, including 2 women, over the Synagogue bombings. A new push to have smoking banned from Australia's pubs and clubs, and a new skin cancer awareness campaign after teenagers admit they want a tan to die for. But first, the government says Australia's borders are under siege from people smugglers again. It suggests an Indonesian smuggler is testing Australia's tough asylum seeker stance in the hope of reopening their trade. Attorney General Philip Ruddock warns there are still hundreds of would-be boat people waiting in Indonesia. Behind bars in Indonesia and facing an uncertain future. These men paid $10,000 to 2 Turkish men to get them to Australia. One of the people smugglers is reportedly called Ayub.
That name has been synonymous with one of the major people smugglers in Indonesia over a period of time.
Mr. Ruddock believes the man was testing the waters of Australia's people smuggling policy.
I suspect that he would have been using this venture to suss out whether or not he was going to be able to get people to Australia again and reopen his people smuggling operation.
The bid failed. The boat reached Melville Island but was turned away and towed out to sea. The opposition says if the government was serious about people smugglers, it would have brought them to Australia to face judgment.
Why didn't they bring them here, prosecute them, deal with them, rather than send them back to Indonesia so that they continue their very dirty trade?
Of 4,000 asylum seekers who've been assessed in the past 4 years, about 1,700 have been resettled as refugees or sent home. That still leaves a large group whose whereabouts are unknown. Mr. Ruddock suspects they're living in Indonesia, waiting for an opportunity for smugglers to bring them to Australia. But that's not going to happen, according to the government.
I don't care whether our policy is tough or it's controversial. I'll tell you what our policy is. It's effective.
Leonie Mellor, 10 News. The children of the illegal immigrant Bakhtiari family have pleaded to be reunited with their detainee mother and newborn brother. The 5 are living in Adelaide while their mother awaits her return to the Baxter Detention Centre, where Father Ali remains. The children made this plea to the federal government.
I would say that I request from them that please just try to let our family to live together.
The 2 elder boys made headlines when they escaped from the Woomera Detention Centre and unsuccessfully sought asylum from the British.
I cannot live without my mom, or I want to die. I'm very tired of this world.
Turkish newspapers report security forces have detained 3 people, including 2 women, over the bomb attacks on 2 synagogues in Istanbul. Officials say the bombings were the work of Al-Qaeda and are an international issue. 20 people were killed and hundreds injured when suicide bombers detonated cars packed with explosives outside the synagogues. The attacks came as members of the local Jewish community were at their weekly prayers, but officials say many of the victims were local Turks. Hospitals were flooded with victims carried across the city by a fleet of ambulances. Turkey's security forces say they will track down the attackers, a job America has promised to support. Back home, 2 men arrested over yesterday's passenger train derailment in Victoria are to face court tomorrow. But it now appears it may have been a tragic mistake on the way to a fishing trip.
The suspected sabotage could have been deadly. Today, one of the 65 passengers aboard returned to the site to see just how lucky she was to escape.
All I can remember, I was seeing the grass and everything as the train kept rolling.
A reluctant heroine, 17-year-old Carolyn Lawford, was sitting in the front carriage when she felt the train suddenly jolt. Bruised and battered, she comforted the injured, lifting them out through the driver's cabin with the help of several men from the other 2 carriages.
Heroic, they're amazing, yeah. I'm just so glad that they were there because I don't know how we would get out if they didn't open the door.
The point of impact was about 100 metres down the track. The ute was pushed along the line and thrown into the side of the bridge, while the front carriage rolled down the embankment, coming to rest on its side. 46 passengers were taken to hospital, mostly with fractures and whiplash, but 2 patients suffered spinal injuries. 5 remain in hospital, all are in a stable condition. Police have charged 2 men aged 35 and 23 from Melbourne with recklessly causing injury. It's believed the pair had been fishing in the area when the older man drove the ute across the train tracks where it got stuck. He's told police he got out of the car when he heard the approaching train.
But a much bigger tragedy could have occurred, and it's miraculous that there weren't fatalities and more serious injuries.
Damaged sections of the tracks are being replaced. It's unlikely the line will be clear until Tuesday. The accident has prompted renewed calls for seatbelts in trains. Andrea Clark, 10 News.
Australia will meet England in the final of the Rugby World Cup next Saturday. After last night's searing heat, Sydney turned on Northern Hemisphere weather for England and France, a cold, blustery wind and pouring rain. But England handled the conditions better, running out the winners 24 points to 7. Johnny Wilkinson again proving the match winner. His deadly accurate kicking adding up vital points to get England ahead and keep them there. France now plays New Zealand on Thursday to decide third place getter. And we'll have a full match report later in Sports Tonight. Meanwhile, a long black cloud descended on New Zealand with the All Black shock loss to Australia in last night's semi-final. The defeat has the country in mourning, sparking fears of an increase in violence across the nation.
Returning to their home base in Melbourne, the shock of defeat weighed heavily on the All Blacks. Sadness too among New Zealand supporters, filing forlornly from Stadium Australia last night, many struggling to put their emotions into words.
We're a bit upset at the moment. Nothing can describe the way we feel, but we love New Zealand.
At Sydney, landmarks transformed into outdoor venues, scenes of ecstasy among joyful Australians. The New Zealanders among them dazed and bewildered.
I've cried for the last hour.
They really surprised you, didn't they?
That surprise came early, an upset signalled in the opening minutes.
Probably after that first try, a runaway try by Sterling Mortlock.
Rokitoko's chasing, but he can give up. Mortlock gets the first try.
I think they've been hiding their secrets.
Maybe they just clicked tonight.
And I thought the All Blacks played. They were like dead men.
New Zealand newspapers have poured scorn on the inability of the All Blacks to thwart a trans-Tasman rival, ranked only 4th in the world, and who have struggled for respect at home. And there's no mistaking the target of their vitriol. Their World Cup dream in tatters, the All Blacks will be playing for national pride on Thursday when they return to Stadium Australia for the play-off for 3rd and 4th.
Still to come in 10's late news, a double fatal in North Queensland baffling police. A growing campaign to ban smoking from Australia's pubs and clubs. And no sign of the housing boom dying on the Gold Coast. You're watching 10's late news. Queensland police are trying to determine how a double fatality occurred on a straight stretch of road near Ayr, south of Townsville. As well as the 2 dead, 5 other people were injured, 2 critically. Police believe the blue vehicle had pulled off the road to change a flat tyre when a 4-wheel drive travelling in the opposite direction veered across the road, slamming into it head-on. Several of the victims were thrown from the vehicle onto the grass verge. Arson squad police have been called in to investigate an overnight house fire in which 2 Victorian women died. The bodies of the women, aged 76 and 54, were found in the kitchen of the home in Melbourne's southeast. The women have not been formally identified and a post-mortem examination will be carried out tomorrow to determine the cause of death. Meanwhile, a vacant house in Footscray was destroyed in another blaze, thick smoke causing nearby homes to be evacuated. And a shop in Carlton was badly damaged by another fire. Reviving the push to completely ban smoking inside all pubs and clubs. New research claims almost 80% of people would prefer to go to a smoke-free bar. The Cancer Council is taking their new anti-smoking campaign to new depths. These bar workers, fed up with breathing passive smoke, wearing snorkels in a silent protest.
It's in your hair, it's in your skin, you breathe it in and your eyes.
But it's not just hospitality workers who are sick of smoke. New research revealing the vast majority of people across New South Wales would rather go to a smoke-free bar.
80% of the community is non-smoking. People who've experienced smoke-free planes, smoke-free buses, smoke-free trains, smoke-free everywhere, think it's fantastic.
It's a different approach. Instead of targeting smokers directly, the campaign is aimed at putting pressure on politicians to legislate. And it has the support of all major health organisations.
And it's something that doctors are very concerned about because we see the results of smoking-related diseases every day.
Performers are also jumping on the bandwagon. Slim Dusty was one of the first artists to request smoke-free venues for his gigs, and today a tribute to him. New South Wales is leading the country with 15 bars already going smoke-free, but that's only because of decisions made by individual bar managers. The Cancer Council wants to see complete smoking bans introduced by July next year, but with strong opposition from the hotel industry and tobacco companies, they could have a battle on their hands. Heidi Cooch, 10 News. Figures showing more Australian teenagers want a tan have sparked a new skin cancer awareness campaign. TV commercials to wear across the country depicted the sun as a tattoo that leaves a killer cancer. The ads follow statistics that show 55% of teenagers believe tans are healthy and attractive. The message hit home to Paula Robinson. She had a mole the size of a Tic Tac that turned into a melanoma.
A suntan, does nothing for you, and it can cost you your life. So it's there's certainly better alternatives to feeling great.
Experts now say there's no such thing as a safe tan. A $30 million moving museum of the world's hottest cars is preparing to take part in Australia's premier motoring rally. The classic Adelaide is also luring a British racing legend back into the driver's seat. An automotive classic cruises into Adelaide. Racing legend Sterling Moss revs up enthusiasm for Australia's premier motoring rally. Britain's greatest racer still has the competitive edge, hoping to add the classic Adelaide rally to hundreds of victories.
Most of the people here, actually weren't even alive when I retired. Retired in 1962. So we're talking 40 years ago.
More than 200 vehicles will compete in the rally, rolling across some of South Australia's most picturesque but demanding roads. Many of the multi-million-dollar machines have been shipped halfway around the world.
We're talking $25 million worth of cars just sitting in the middle of Adelaide, and cars that you would only see at best on a racetrack, but never on public roads.
Motoring relics like this 1959 racing Ferrari still turning heads.
Beautiful, isn't it?
This 1965 GT40 is one of the most expensive cars in the field. Built in the 1960s by Ford to rival Ferrari, this exotic machine is worth more than $2 million. The rally starts Thursday, with most cars expected to finish the 11,000-kilometre route within 4 days. Emily Rice, 10 News. Well, it seems the property boom isn't quite over, producing a new record for beachfront properties on the Gold Coast. A modest cottage which sold for $176,000 20 years ago today went under the hammer for almost $4 million.
Property is sold, so to you in the centre. Congratulations, Vic.
Bidding was fierce, but in the end it was former New Zealand Rugby League player Jared McCracken who signed the contract.
I've been looking at the area for quite a long time and noticed the growth that's been achieved here, but I still think it's undervalued.
For his money, he not only got the house, but 16 metres of ocean frontage. A property developer, he says he and his wife will keep it as a holiday home for now. Still ahead in 10's Late News, Australia's newest and greenest power station. A tragic end to a special visit to the world's biggest cruise liner. Then in sports tonight, the catch that earned this guy a small fortune. The The Western Australian government has admitted an area of Perth's South Beach that fronts a controversial housing development site contains traces of heavy metal contamination. The admission has strengthened calls for the development to be stalled until a proper site assessment is carried out.
The popular stretch of beach already shows signs of erosion. Protesters say it's one of many from a former lead smelter at this site, now set for a major housing development. Today, the planning minister admitted old drums that had been dumped on the beach had shown evidence of contamination when they were dug up.
Unless you're sort of eating large volumes of sand, it's probably not going to be an immediate risk. But obviously, it's something that we do want to clear up.
Protesters say the new evidence poses a severe health risk and want the housing development shelved until a proper assessment is carried out.
The cocktail we've got here is exposing not just locals here, but potentially the whole of Fremantle and areas of Coburn as well. They've got no idea how contaminated this site is. If it's deep, if it's shallow, we know there's 5 metres, we know there's stuff at the surface in different areas. They've got no idea.
The action group estimates the clean-up would cost tens of millions of dollars over several years.
If you paid me $1 million to live on this site, I would say no thank you. I wouldn't risk my family's health.
But the developer says planning approval followed a 3-year environmental assessment, which included areas outside the site's boundary.
The contamination of this site only further justifies the redevelopment and urban renewal of the site. We're seeing the private sector in this case pick up the cost for a very expensive remediation as opposed to the taxpayers.
They will not be able to proceed to any development until those remediation plans are put in action and are signed off by the Department of the Environment.
Plans for the site remediation, which the developer estimates would cost between $2 and $4 million, could be approved by the end of the year. Jacinda Birch, 10 News.
A new power station opened at Kwinana in Western Australia today is designed to slash greenhouse gas emissions by up to 1 million tonnes per year. The $300 million Coburn power station is only the third in Australia to use a combination of gas and steam to generate electricity. Premier Jeff Gallop says that the new plant is part of a long-term commitment to replace ageing power stations with modern, state-of-the-art generating systems.
We're a growing state and we've got to make sure that we've got the power generation capacity to meet that demand in the future.
Guerrillas have brought down 2 more American Black Hawk helicopters in northern Iraq, killing 17 soldiers and wounding 5 others. Witnesses say one chopper was hit by a rocket-propelled grenade, then crashed into the other chopper.
Emergency workers race through Mosul. Witnesses watched as a Black Hawk helicopter swerved to avoid ground fire, crashing into a second chopper. Both ploughed into the streets below, narrowly missing thousands of Iraqis in nearby homes. And the violence continued in Baghdad. Earlier, a train carrying supplies for the US Army was blown up south of Tikrit. In a separate incident, locals report after US soldiers opened fire.
The toll has prompted a major shift in US policy. One transfer of power, the Bush administration has now accepted to give Iraqis control of their country.
Struck interim leaders will see US authorities relinquish power by the middle of next year as a new provisional Iraqi government is created.
And with its assumption of power, the state of occupation will end.
The plan promises a new constitution and nationwide democratic elections by the end of 2005. But that won't be the end of American forces in Iraq. President Bush has vowed to maintain a US presence until Saddam Hussein is captured or killed.
The Americans and those that are contributing in Iraq, including us, got to see it through.
Rani Sadler, 10 News.
A tragic end to what was supposed to be a special day out. 15 people, including several children, were killed trying to board the world's largest cruise liner, the Queen Mary 2, when the gangplank they were using collapsed.
Beneath the bow of the world's largest passenger liner, the scale of the French emergency services response underlined the severity of the accident. The Queen Mary 2 was being visited by families of the shipyard workers. As they crossed the gangway to board the liner, it collapsed, throwing dozens of people 50 feet down onto the concrete of the dry dock, children among them. The seriously injured and more lightly wounded were taken to local hospitals. The gangway they'd fallen from had only been built the day before.
miracle qu'on est encore là parce que...
It's a miracle we're still alive, said this survivor, because we fell from such a great height. I was frightened for my life. The Cunard flagship is the world's biggest and most expensive cruise liner, costing some £550 million. She can carry more than 2,600 passengers and is due to be named by the Queen in a ceremony at Southampton in January, before she embarks on her maiden voyage to Florida 4 days later. Just why did a newly erected gangway from the quayside over such a long drop fail? A French judicial investigation is now underway. The French president has expressed his sympathy for the bereaved and will visit the shipyard tomorrow.
Thousands of bikers roared through the snowy mountains today, all in the name of charity. The Snowy Ride involves bikers from around Australia raising money for research into childhood cancer. The parade was led by former world champ Wayne Gardner and rocker Jimmy Barnes. But the highlight of the event came when a group of kids from Sydney's Children's Hospital was fitted out in all the gear and had a chance to ride. I'll have the latest weather details shortly, then it's Sports Tonight with Matthew White.
Thanks, Tracey. Coming up, the Wallabies are confident they can play even better in the World Cup final. Also, the Kangaroos claim the Ashes series in Rugby League, and Curry Webb circles the leaders at the Tournament of Champions.
Yes, all around us. Style points and, more importantly, the birdie.
Widespread across Western Australia and southeastern clear sky charted trough nearing the Bay Australia towards South Australia, high in the controls conditions along the east coast. So tomorrow should see a mostly cloudy day for Cairns, clearing showers around Townsville. Mostly sunny for Brisbane, possible showers in Sydney, cloudy for Canberra. Mainly sunny in Hobart and Melbourne, late showers in Adelaide, showers increasing in Perth, and late thunderstorms across the centre and in the top end. He may be dead, but the king still lives. So today, Elvis fans got the chance to snap up another piece of rock and roll royalty. More than 600 bits of memorabilia went under the hammer, bidders keen to sort the trash from the treasure. And authentic or not, the jumpsuits drew plenty of attention. Buyers remained enthusiastic, even though a special edition of the Memphis Times confirming the king's death was among the memorabilia. And that's the latest from the 10 newsroom. Thanks for joining us. You'll get all the latest in our next national bulletin at 11:30 in the morning. But stick around now for all the action in Sports Tonight with Matthew White. I'm Tracey Spicer from 10's Late News Team. Good night.
Tonight, coming up with a complete World Cup picture. Now there's only one game to go. Let's take a look at what's ahead.
Coming down on Australia's halfway to Kerry. How good was that?
Tonight, we'll heed the World Cup warning from Eddie Jones. The best is yet to come from the Wallabies.
We haven't achieved what we wanted to achieve. There's no way this side stays as long as they can.
We'll update the injury list.
And this is not looking good.
Relive the magic of that superb semi-final.
Thank you very much.
And run the rule over Australia's final opponent.
Wilkinson, all 24. Wilkinson 24, France 7.
Also, victory for the Aussie Rugby League team. The Kangaroos clinching the Ashes series against Great Britain.
Magnificent.
Plus, your comprehensive coverage of the day's other sport. Golf, basketball, soccer, cricket, and rally, with Cody Crocker wrapping up the Australian Championship.
Boy, oh boy, this is the guys at bottom. We did it.
This is Sports Tonight. England will play Australia in the World Cup final after literally booting France out of the tournament in the semi-finals tonight. Johnny Wilkinson scored all of England's points to set up a rematch of the 1991 final against the Wallabies.
There was no doubting the British pride. There was no doubting the will of the French. And there was no doubting the boot of Johnny Wilkinson to get the favourites off to a dream start.
Now on his right foot. He has done it. And first point for England.
The French counter was swift. Serge Betson sliding for the first try.
Betson held it brilliantly. Serge Betson!
The normally
disciplined British side were causing too many mistakes, although within shooting range, the normally faultless Frederic Michalak could not make them pay. But he's pushed it out to the right. But it was another boot that caused the most hurt, Christophe Dominici tripping Jason Robinson, leaving the French a man down. Well, the only points the Brits could get before half-time was courtesy of Johnny Wilkinson's kicking. Distance not a problem. There was no doubting Wilkinson was the target.
He was flat, absolutely cream, still lying flat on his face, sucking in the big ones. He got a beauty.
And Betson paid for the crime. 10 in the bin, another 3 points for England, as the French went about ruining their World Cup chances with mistake after mistake. The English went about murdering the concept of running rugby. The second half resembling nothing more than a chess match, and Johnny Wilkinson had all the moves.
Sizing up another drop goal. That's a hat-trick.
Prince Harry's happy. His side winners 24-7 without scoring a try, and will now attempt to do what they couldn't do 12 years ago: beat Australia in the World Cup final.
1991, it was the last time the English made the final. They lost that 12-6, but no doubt they'll be scoring more points this time around. If Johnny Wilkinson's on fire again, he scored every one of those 24 points tonight. And a warning for the English even before the game tonight from Australian coach Eddie Jones, who reckons the Wallabies' best is still to come. Last night it was an incredible performance from a team that was simply under the pump to perform, and they did, beating the All Blacks by 12 points in a near flawless display.
The referee looks at the clock. He blows his whistle.
A full-time whistle that silenced the rugby world and sent the country New Zealand into a state of... It wasn't just the manner of the victory. A ruthless display of world effect. Tournament favourite Eddie Jones, the bear to come.
You know, we played some reasonable rugby last night in patches. Good enough to win the game, good enough to win the contest for 80 minutes, but our intention firmly is to improve for next week.
The moment that turned the match, Carlos Spencer's pass found Sterling Mortlock.
Intercepted. Mortlock. They are going to make hard work of it. Rototoko's chasing, but he can give up. Mortlock gets the first try.
The shell-shocked All Blacks never recovered. The ghosts of past World Cup failures coming back to haunt them. The Chokers tag, a label they'll have to live with for another 4 years.
Mistake from the number 11.
A nation now looking for scapegoats.
No hint of handing in my resignation or anything like that. I love coaching and I'll leave it at that.
The squad left to face the music on their return to Melbourne, still searching for answers as to what went wrong.
There's a real sort of somber mood in the team at the moment. You know, there's a lot of hurt and players today are really feeling it.
The main concern for the Wallabies, a serious neck injury to prop Ben Darwin. Play halted for 8 minutes when he lost feeling in his arms and legs. X-rays today confirmed a damaged disc that may require surgery. He should make a full recovery, but is definitely out of the final. Sterling Mortlock will be available. He trained today after being substituted late in the game with leg cramps. The Wallabies received plenty of support on the streets of Sydney. In the cold light of morning, they are determined they haven't played their final one game early.
What we tried to do was enjoy the victory, but, you know, our minds are set on next week. You know, we know we haven't achieved what we wanted to achieve. There's no way this side has played as well as they can.
If the Wallabies can do the job against either England or France, it will be an historic win. No team has successfully defended the World Cup.
And it's been a double celebration for Australia overnight, with the Kangaroos retaining the Ashes after beating Great Britain in the second Rugby League test. A field goal by man of the match, Brett Comorley, gave Australia the edge in the dying minutes. The Aussies scoring a 23-20 victory.
Primed for their best chance to win the Ashes in 30 years, Great Britain came out firing. Adrian Morley's reflex pass hitting Terry Newton perfectly. Morley serving up the immediate answer. Darren Lockyer levelling the scores.
Another stab kick through. That's for Lockyer. That's a
Great Britain's kicking game unsettling the Kangaroos' defence. Chris Radlinski pouncing.
Radlinski's chasing the kick ahead by Deacon. Radlinski will score.
And awarded the try despite appearing to be offside. Some uncharacteristic errors began creeping into the Australian game.
Australia are wobbling.
Seven receiver picking the wrong place to get the fumbles. Gary Connolly capitalising with his first test try. The Brits up 20-8. Craig Fitzgibbon ensured Australia went to the break with some momentum. Kamali keeping it flowing in the second half. The Kangaroos back to within 2 points. Enforcer Adrian Morley was again put on report for collecting Matt Singh. A lopsided penalty count frustrating the home side.
Every 50-50 is going their way.
As was Brett Kamali, breaking a 20-old deadlock.
And this man Kamali is becoming a nuisance.
Great Britain running out of steam, unable to score in the second half. Australia retaining the Ashes.
Mate, we come over with a point to prove. You know, a few injuries in Australia, and a lot of us had a chance to play at this level, and I think we all grabbed it really well.
This is Sports Tonight. We'll take a break, come back with more. It in the IC Cup. Crocker win the championship.
Boy, oh boy, this is for the guys in Possum. We did it.
Welcome back to Sports Tonight in the ING Cup. And with 7 regular Queenslanders either injured or on national duties, Victoria had a great chance today to beat the Bulls for the 3rd time in 2 weeks, and they made sure they took advantage.
Into the attack. It was the first ball of Andrew McDonald's spell that removed Daniel Payne. A breakthrough getting rid of one of the danger men, but leaving another. Steve Farrell producing the long handle and the most valuable catch of the day.
Dear me, and take it.
Well, that's $600. He might want to get a haircut too.
Farrell fell to the bowling of Mick Lewis a short time later, but the Bulls were still on track for a big score, with Victorian nemesis Martin Love fresh from a Pura Cup triple century. The skipper looked impregnable until a moment of brilliance from Jonathan Moss.
He's got him. That's brilliant fielding.
From there, the scoring became difficult. The Bulls would finish on 212 thanks to a Damien McKenzie 6 that almost earned him $50 grand. With the wickets flowing through the day, Victoria wanted to make inroads early, and Matthew Elliott obliged.
And Matthew Elliott smacks him.
John Moss was the designated slugger in the Bushrangers lineup and soon showed why. Not once, but twice clearing the boundary to an eager crowd waiting in the stands.
That could be well caught.
The stand was broken with the departure of Moss. Elliott followed soon after when Stuart Law was introduced to the attack. The bonus point fell out of reach, but with Brad Hodge improvising, the result was never in doubt.
Travelled all the way.
2 wins from 3 starts now in the ING Cup for the Vicks. Elliott and man of the match John Moss laid the foundations. Brad Hodge finished unbeaten to continue his good start to the summer. And Australia has continued its preparations for the Tri-Series final against India on Tuesday. Since losing to the hosts in their opening match of the tournament, the Aussies have won 5 straight games. They can't wait for this one.
And we come here really as underdogs, and we've made it to the final, and we're looking forward to this challenge now. So it's a new challenge for us.
India earned a spot in the final with a crushing 145-run win over New Zealand overnight. Sachin Tendulkar was unstoppable.
All the way. What a lovely stroke that was off the blade of the British champion.
To the ground. Tendulkar and opening partner Verinder Sehwag belted centuries as the Indians smashed 5 for 353 from their 50 overs. In reply, the Kiwis were no match, all out for the 208 in the 47th over. And India tonight has named its 16-man test squad for the Tour of Australia. The big surprise, young left-handed batsman Yuvraj Singh left out in favour of Sadagopan Ramesh. The Indians will play 4 tests, the first starting on December 4. Subaru driver Cody Crocker has paid tribute to the late Possum-born after wrapping up the Australian Rally Championship in the final round of the series in Tasmania. Crocker and navigator Greg Folletta taking the title for the first time. Subaru's Cody Crocker had reason to celebrate even before the final day of Safari Tasmania started. Regardless of what happened today, Crocker and navigator Greg Folletta would be crowned winners of the Australian Rally Championship. In his moment of triumph, Crocker remembered the late Possum-born.
Oh my God, it's obviously unofficial. We've got to finish the event, and boy oh boy, this is the guys in Possum. We did it.
After winning 4 stages in Heat 1 yesterday, and with the championship wrapped up, Crocker and Folletta went winless today, finished 3rd overall for the weekend. standout performer was Mitsubishi's Flying Fin Yuha Kangas.
Crest short K left, slowly down to medium right.
The privateer dominated and won 6 of the 11 stages contested today on the way to his first round victory in the Australian Rally Championship, an early Christmas present.
Try to get good result in here, and it's nice to go home with the Christmas if you can do well in here.
Kangas finished third in the series standings. Rocker's Subaru teammate Dean Herridge was second for the round. Scott Pettit completed a memorable weekend for Mitsubishi with 2 stage wins today.
Well, the pace is just, I think it's the fastest. I think it's 10% faster than it was in Melbourne.
Coming off last month's round victory in Melbourne, Subaru's Simon Evans was one of 2 other drivers who could challenge Crocker for the series crown, but mechanical troubles yesterday ruined his chances. Chasing hard, Mitsubishi's Ed Ordinsky was the 3rd driver in contention. He had a stage win this afternoon and ended up 4th outright in Safari Tasmania and 2nd in the championship. Roger Federer's bid to finish the year as world number 2 remains on target at the season-ending Masters Cup. Federer beat world number 1 Andy Roddick in the semis to set up a finals berth against Andre Agassi.
Taking on the unbeaten Swiss, the A-Rod immediately went to his big guns to put on the early pressure, but Federer's power from the backcourt was just as damaging. Without a single break point, little separated the 2 semi-finalists in a tough, hard-hitting first set. The pressure taking its toll, unforced errors frustrating the big-serving American. The errors opened the door for the Swiss, claiming the first set with a bullet. Federer piling on the pressure in the second, breaking the world number 1 twice to book his debut appearance in a Masters final. Rain may have slowed the start of the earlier semi, but it did little to dampen the competition's oldest competitors. Andre Agassi and Rainer Schuttler slugging it out from the baseline. Agassi responding to all the German could muster. On serve in the first until Schuttler's deft touch gained him a break and the first set. Needing to take a look at himself, Agassi stepped up. The 33-year-old American shutting the number 6 out the second set with a triple break, taking it 6-love. The German proved more resilient in the third, but no match for the veteran. Agassi signing up for the Masters showdown.
The American veteran outclassing Schuttler in 3, while Federer 5-30 winners past Roddick. That final is in the morning, Agassi versus Federer. More scores, and Perth Glory have jumped to the top of the NSL table after accounting for Adelaide 4-1. South Melbourne humiliated crosstown rivals the Knights 5-0, and the Kings earned their first point of the season, drawing 2-2 with Olympic. Former race caller Johnny Tapp has made a bold claim to get his horse into the Miracle Mile field after a stunning run in the Newcastle Mile. Tapp has trained Loyal Deputy into 2nd place behind the Falcon Strike, which has already been invited to run the Miracle Mile.
As a caller, Johnny Tapp has praised many winners in all forms of racing. As a harness racing trainer, his horses struggle for respect.
He's coming of age, slowly but surely. He's starting to work out that this is serious business, this racing. He's been a slow learner and a horse who has been switching off a bit in his races. He seems to have put all that behind him, thank goodness.
Loyal Deputy was ranked behind TSS Poseidon and the Falcon Strike heading to the Newcastle Mile. But he had the ideal run, sat behind the Falcon Strike the entire race. Was right there at the end.
Loyal Deputy's coming. The Falcon Strike's just doing it brilliantly though. Easy win, wave your whip, Gary Hall. And the
winner had already been invited into the Miracle Mile. This just confirms the director's decision.
We were a bit worried he might be a little bit underdone. 54.5's, not the fastest they've been around here, but it's the fastest he's ever gone around. And if he does something similar to that in 13 days' time, I think they'll have something to chase.
Tapp refuses to get excited about Loyal Deputy. Miracle Mile invitations could be a lottery.
I mean, there is a chance, don't get me wrong. I'm not sure whether they'll plan to run him in the sprint at Harrow Park next week or not, but if he went around on that and went very well again, then certainly, yeah.
And if he happens to do something sensational there, maybe we don't give up hope after all.
TSS Poseidon was extremely disappointing, finishing well back in the field.
Still to come on sports tonight, South Africa push further ahead at the World Cup of golf. While in the States, Kari Webb stages a third-round comeback.
All around it.
And a Scottish surprise for Holland in the Euro 2004 qualifiers. Scotland is on the brink of an unlikely berth at Euro 2004 after a stunning 1-0 win over Holland in the first leg of the playoff tie in Glasgow. The Scots inspired by the younger brigade to leave the Dutch staring down the barrel of yet another big tournament failure.
53 places apart on FIFA's world rankings, few gave Scotland a prayer of extending star-studded Holland. But it took 22 minutes for Everton's James McFadden to give birdie votes men a lifeline. Beset by the usual internal bickering in the build-up, the Dutch unified, Jaap Stam coming close, before Scottish defender Gary Naismith cleared Frank de Boer's effort off the line. Holland's continued to lay siege after the break, but Andy van der Meijden's woodwork rattler the closest they came to an equaliser. The Scots holding on for a precious lead they'll take to Amsterdam for next week's second leg. Missing several key players, Wales rolled up their sleeves to eke out a valuable 0-0 draw in Russia. Goalkeeper Paul Jones in sparkling form, keeping alive Welsh hopes of a first appearance in a major tournament in 46 years. Their chances improving even further with Russia missing playmaker Alexander Mostovoy and goalkeeper Sergei Achinnikov for the second leg through suspension. It's bad enough big boys Spain forced to go through the playoffs. Even worse, falling behind to Norway. But Stefan Everson's unexpected strike soon forgotten as Spain's all-time leading scorer Raul levelled matters 7 minutes later. The home side's second-half domination rewarded with the winner, courtesy of an own goal from Norway's Henning Berg 5 minutes from time.
Spain with plenty of work still to do, the two British teams exceeding expectations, while elsewhere Latvia edged closer to their first major championship appearance, stunning Turkey 1-0. Croatia drew with Slovenia, and the second legs of all these ties are next Wednesday, with the winners qualifying for Euro 2004. South Africa is now 7 shots clear after round 3 of golf's World Cup in South Carolina. Rory Sabatini and Trevor Immelman moving to 14 under par after the 4-ball format at Kiawah Island, helped by this Sabatini monster at 12. But it was unlucky 13 for American Justin Leonard, who found trouble in one of the course's notorious bunkers, but he proceeded to hit a superb recovery to keep his team in second place on 7 under alongside the French. But it's the South Africans who look home and ho. Sabatini again here, shining on the 16th. Now Australia's Stuart Appleby and Stephen Leaney are 17 shots behind the runaway leaders. And the final round tomorrow is a foursomes event. South Africa on target to win the World Cup for the 5th time in the event's 50-year history. And an Aussie charge at the LPGA Tournament of Champions. Kari Webb and Rachel Teskey both karting 5 under par rounds, 67, to close the gap on leader Dorothy Delassen. The Aussie pair just 2 behind now after round 3. Webb put down 5 birdies in a row on the front 9 to ignite her round.
Yes. All around it.
Style points and, more importantly, the birdie, getting her to within 1 shot. A sports
Teskey also posting plenty of red numbers, dropping only 1 shot in her round, but mixing it up with 6 birdies, including a cup filler at the 11th hole. And how do you upstage a former MVP in Allen Iverson and end one of the sport's longest losing streaks? Well, ask LeBron James. It's all in a day's work for the new superstar rookie who led the Cleveland Cavaliers to an upset win over Philadelphia. Now, the last time the Cavs beat Philly, LeBron was in grade 9. He proved he she isn't. Wet behind the ears in the big time. 22 points, 8 assists to end a 16-game losing streak against the Sixers.
From the wonder kid, LeBron James.
Now, the Cavs blew a 9-point lead in the fourth quarter, but a jump shot from James forced it in overtime, and from there they were never headed, holding on for a 3-point win. Time now for the play of the day. It wasn't just the Victorian players who got one over Queensland in the ING Cup match at the MCG today. Steve Farrell thought he was the man after carting Andrew McDonald straight down the ground. But he was upstaged by the fan who got on the end of it. $600 for that guy. Now, we don't really care how he spends it. Shane Warne said in commentary perhaps the trip to the hairdresser might go down. We kind of agree. Good catch, prop, play of the day. And that's it for now. I'm Matthew White. I'll see you next time. Good night.
Network 10 advises you that the following is a paid presentation.